Hey guys, we're back with another quick tip on how to make your Fox body great again. And today's tip is the mass air meter. This one's got the stock mass air, but it really doesn't matter. All of them have the same issue. Even the newer style sometimes does it. This sensor that fits inside the housing, you just push upward, like squeeze this clip, and that unplugs. You take the two security Torx bits out of here. They're T20 security Torx. And then the mass air sensor pops right off the car. I've already cleaned this one, but I'll show it to you anyway. Maybe you can see better with my finger behind it. Alright, you see those two little wires there? They're called MAF hot wires. One is a temperature sensor, and the other is the sensor wire. But basically what these things do is the mass air meter puts out X amount of voltage through this wire, and as the air flows into the engine, the air cools off the wire. The colder the air, the more dense the air, or the more amount of air there is, the more the air coming across these two wires cool them off. The computer responds by increasing the amperage to basically create more heat. It keeps these wires, I think it's something like 200 degrees Celsius all the time. I don't remember the exact temp, so don't bake me if that's not right, but it's a couple hundred degrees. And so the important thing is that the mass air meter measures how much amperage it takes to keep that wire at a certain temperature, and airflow affects that. The more air you flow in, the more amperage it takes. The mass air meter, the sensor's job is to report a voltage to the computer that reflects airflow. So what it does is it measures the amount of amperage it takes to keep this wire at 200 degrees or whatever, and then it sends out a voltage commensurate with that amperage to the computer. Each mass air meter has its own different calibration, but essentially this meter puts out between 0 and 5 volts. At idle, you're going to get about, roughly 0.7 volts. Inside here, there's not much to see. There's just a tube that goes inside the mass air meter. Oh, by the way, if you look closely, come on, focus. Focus. There you go. You look closely, you'll see that there's a black O-ring on that black sensor. It's kind of hard to see there, but trust me, it's there. Make sure that black O-ring is there and in good condition. They almost always are, but if somehow that gets lost, then air can leak into the mass air meter through the sensor body. So put that back down. We'll tighten that back up. I've already cleaned it, and what you want to do is you want to clean those two hot wires with CRC mass airflow sensor cleaner. It's supposed to be made for doing this. And you can buy a tiny can, don't bother, and you can buy a big can. Buy the big can. It's big can's about the size of a can of carburetor cleaner. So you take the sensor out, you spray those two hot wires real good, and you very carefully inspect them both before and after you clean the wires. If you do it before, you use a bright light, maybe even a magnifying glass, and you have a real good look at those wires. Those wires should be, silver colored with like a tan or a creamy white little center piece. I don't know if they're resistors or what you'd call these, but when they get dirty, they start to look brown or black or grow some brown fur on them. They start to get kind of disgusting. And when that happens, they act like a little sleeping bag, a little insulator around the wires, keeping the wires from getting cooled off from the fresh incoming airflow. Typically speaking, what we see is that it creates a rich condition at idle and a very lean condition at wide open throttle. Although that can vary a little bit, it's always a problem with measuring the amount of air coming in the engine, and that's the sensor that tells the computer how much fuel to put in the engine. So if you've got a fueling problem, or you think you do, or if you've over-oiled your K&N panel filter or cone filter, the oil sucks off of that filter and gets onto this MAF hot wire, screws up the readings. You should probably clean the MAF maybe every time you change out the air filter. Pull it off, hit it with a little CRC mass airflow sensor cleaner, stick it back in. Make sure you let it dry for at least 5 minutes or something before you put it back in. You don't want the hot wires getting hot while they're wet, so give it 5 or 10 minutes after you spray it to cool off.